see you, my man. How are you, Jay?
I'm not flying tonight.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Give Gary a round of applause, guys. Love this guy. Thank you. It's good to be here. And yes, we're going to I was just telling, one way or another, we're getting Bernie to the Senate, all right? We're making that happen. It's just happening right at the end. The magic's breaking our way. I was on a phone call with President Trump actually about half an hour before we came here. He's excited about Ohio because we want to send a big signal. We're going to win Ohio for President Trump, but if we deliver big double-digit margins, it sends a signal to the rest of the country. It also helps pull Bernie and the other candidates up. And so let's get that done for President Trump as well. He says hello to all of you. You know, I was at an event like this a few weeks ago, and actually somebody came up after the event. It was a true story, talking about their friend who their son went to school, and he was like 7 years old, gets indoctrinated by some type of LGBTQIA transgender religion thing, goes in as a boy, comes out identifying as a girl. I didn't know what to tell the parent. The best thing I could think of is that sounds like the Democratic nominee for U.S. president, right? You just got one comes out as the other. It's the same machine we're up against. And I just hope they learn their lesson this time around, actually. That identity politics never works. You always get a rotten candidate in the end. So when they lose, and I think that's coming, potentially decisively on November 5th, I hope they learn that you shouldn't give somebody the job just because of their race or their gender, and it always turns out to be a disaster. And this time, I'm actually not even referring to Kamala Harris, I'm referring to Tim Walz, actually. Who also got, so it doesn't work in any direction, right? It's just a disaster however it works, okay? So let me tell you something about this race. I don't view November 5th anymore as the destination. All right, November 5th is the starting line. The destination is what we're actually running to as a country. This is where we need to level up. Starting on November 6th, the morning of November 6th, things change. Between now and then, we're going to hit the other guys hard. You know, Kamala Harris gives us plenty to criticize, and just as Joe Biden did, just as Sherrod Brown does, or Tim Walz, but we're not running against any of them. We're running against a machine. All right? These are just puppets played by that machine. We're running against that machine. We want to get in there and actually dismantle that machine. That's what draining the swamp is all about. That's what making America great again is all about. So on November 6th, we're done with the other individual candidates. It just doesn't matter. They're irrelevant. This is about what are we running to. We're not just running from something. We're running back to something. We can obsess over the left. I mean, they'll give us their religions. Their cults, wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, anti-Semitism, Zelenskyism, you know, that's a recent one, depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. These are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country. And I think for a long time, we as conservatives, we've gotten good, and I'm not criticizing other Republicans. I'm talking about myself here, even looking at my own learnings over the last couple of years. We're very good at stamping out the poison and criticizing the other side when necessary. But now is our moment. On November 6th is our moment to now level up and say, this is who we are and what we actually stand for. See, the individual, family, nation, and God. That beats race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to stand for our own vision. We got to answer, what does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? To me, it means we believe in the ideals of 1776, that we believe in merit, that the best person gets the job, that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That's why we're against the DEI agenda. That's why we're against affirmative action. That's why we're against the woke agenda. Not because we're against anybody else, but because we stand for merit. It means we stand for the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants who came to this country, to Cincinnati, Ohio, over 40 years ago, where my parents still live today, where I grew up. My wife's parents did the same thing, came as legal immigrants to this country. We're raising our two boys in Columbus, not far from here. I'm the kid of legal immigrants when I say this. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. And that means that if we have had the largest influx of illegal aliens into this country in American history, which we have, That means we will logically then have the largest mass deportation in American history. That is not racist. That is not xenophobic. That is what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It means the people we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not the shadow government of three-letter agencies in the deep state that's running the show today. So as I often tell President Trump, don't forget about the second mass deportation as well. Not just the mass deportation of millions of illegals out of this country, but also the mass deportation of millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of Washington, D.C. That too is how you save a country. These are not black ideas or white ideas. These are not really even Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. They shouldn't be, at least. They are American ideals that we fought a revolution to secure in 1776. And the question for us right now is, do we actually believe those ideals still exist? I actually do. Not in some fake, cheesy politician way, but in a true way. I believe those ideals still exist in our country. We're just going to have to work hard to make the sacrifice to revive them. I was the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. I was 37 years old. Thank you. I learned a lot. Didn't do everything perfectly, but there's something going on in our generation where less than 16%, the generation younger than me is Gen Z, 16% of Gen Z or less says they're proud to be an American. We have a 25% recruitment deficit in our own U.S. military. Last year, of every 4 people that were supposed to show up, only 3 did. What's going on in the country? We're hungry for a cause. We're lost. Young people especially, we're starved for purpose and meaning and identity. At a time in our history when the things that used to fill that void, faith in God, patriotism, hard work, family, belief in yourself, these things have disappeared. And I think of all of the things that President Trump is going to deliver in this next term. Growing the economy, sealing the border, staying out of World War III, no small feat, but he's going to do it. Of all the things that are so important one by one, I think underneath that is a deeper crisis of meaning. I think we're living in the greatest loss of national self-confidence in the future of America. We've lost our confidence in America. And I think that that's the one thing. When we say make America great again, it's about restoring that self-confidence in who we are as a people, who we are as a nation. Our founding fathers had that, by the way. How old are you, young man? I like that patriotic suit. You're 17? What's your name? Jake. Jake, 17 years old. I like that. The next generation, good suit, too. I like that. So, that's what gets me passionate, is to pass on that American confidence to our next generation. Our founding fathers had it. So I said I was 37 when I ran for president. Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. And I'm not kidding you, he invented the swivel chair while he was at it. He was fluent in 5 languages. He could write in 2 more. He nearly bankrupted himself, building libraries, building wine cellars that he donated to the country. He was a truly ambitious person, signed the Lewis and Clark expeditions into motion. This is the character of our founding fathers. Alexander Hamilton, his great rival, was like 14 years younger at the time, only a little bit older than you, when they set an entire country into motion. There were 56 men like them who signed the Declaration of Independence. We don't often ask what became of them, actually. 12 of them had their homes ransacked and burned to the ground by the British. 5 of them were captured by the British and tortured until their deaths. 9 of them died in the American Revolution. 3 more of them had their own kids die in the American Revolution. They didn't make the sacrifice for them. They were well off. They were, what your peers might call privileged. They were. That's what made their sacrifice notable. They didn't do it for them. They did it for us, so we could be here 250 years later enjoying the blessings of liberty in the greatest nation known to the history of mankind. And my generation and your generation and every one of us in this room, we refuse to be the generation that squanders it now. So it's up to us to make this sacrifice. This is our 1776 moment. 2024 is the 1776 of our lifetimes. And it's going to require us as Republicans to do some things that make us uncomfortable. I'll give you one example that's very practical right now for the next 18 days. I'll be very honest. I hate early voting. I don't like it, okay? I believe we need single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday with paper ballots and government-issued ID to match the voter file, and English as the sole language that appears on a ballot. Puerto Rico does this. If Puerto Rico can do it, we can do it in Ohio, and we can do it in the rest of the country. That's what I believe we need. But we're not going to wish it into existence. Right. All right, we got to, sometimes for a country, you got to be able to do the things that make you uncomfortable to be able to create the country, because it's not about you and it's not about me. It's about you and your next generation, all right? That's why we're in this. And so just this time, vote early and take as many people legally with you to do it and get the job done, because you know the other side's doing it. So if they're doing it, we're not going to have our heads stuck in the sand and wish our principles into existence. We're going to get our principles into existence by winning. So that's what I'm asking of each of you. Be a poll watcher. Take the extra time to go the distance. For those of you who have lived the American dream as I have, write the check. Okay, back the causes and the candidates all the way up to and including issue 1, by the way, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Those of you who've got the green pieces of paper, use that. If you don't have the green pieces of paper, that's fine too. Use your time, your energy, your voice. When you're the only person in a room who believes what you do, don't wilt like a flower. Stand up and say it. Say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect your fellow neighbor enough to tell him what you actually think, not some fake, woke-washed version of it. You see, fear has been infectious in our country, spread like an epidemic. That's the real epidemic, faster than COVID-19. The infection of fear in our country. But courage can be contagious too, I mean that. It just takes more of us willing to actually step up and show it. And so that's what I bring up our founding fathers. It's easy to talk about how cool they were and then go on with the drudgery of our day rather than asking ourselves, how do we have the same responsibility that they did? That is what this moment calls for. We've been celebrating our diversity and our differences for so darn long that we forgot all of the ways that we are the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals. And it's up to us to revive it at the national level. And I'll close my remarks before opening this up. We'll love to take some questions if you guys are up for it, and we can have a conversation. But before I close this up, I also want to say a few words about Ohio. Okay, the future of Ohio is also on the ballot this cycle. Not at the top of the ballot. The top of the ballot is the future of the country, including Ohio. Donald Trump and my good friend, our fellow Ohioan, J.D. Vance, we're going to send in there right with him. Did a great job at every step of this. I'm so proud of him. He was a law school classmate of mine. We were, I'll tell you this, we were the Bengals, Bengals and Browns today. I know we probably have a divided room on this, but he and I used to watch Bengals games in New Haven. Neither of us knew this would be the world we're in just over a decade later. But we're going to send them back. We're going to send Bernie Moreno to the Senate, because I got to say a word about this too on Bernie. You don't get the full Trump agenda for the second term. We don't get it unless we have majorities in the Senate and in the House. And while Ohio this time won't be the state, thank God, that decides who the president's going to be, okay, because we know we're a solid red state at the level of the presidency, Ohio will be the state that determines whether or not we have a majority in the Senate. And that's going to be whether or not we send Bernie Moreno back, which is why we're going to do it. And for those of you who just don't do the electoral math here, we have a pretty dialed-in group. Let me just make it really practical for you. Donald Trump is about 12 points, 10 points ahead in Ohio. Bernie Moreno is in a neck-and-neck race. What does that mean? That means that literally if every person who fills in Donald Trump on the bubble also votes for Bernie Moreno, he's automatically the next U.S. Senator. In fact, I'm a math guy. Let's make this even simpler. Even if 1 out of 10 of those people who are about to vote for Donald Trump but Sherrod Brown, even if 1 out of 10 of them switch, that means Bernie Moreno's our next senator and we have a majority in the U.S. Senate. So that's actually work we have cut out for us right now, from now to the finish line. Just find the people who are voting for Donald Trump and get them to vote for Bernie Moreno instead of Sherrod Brown. It's that simple. And here's a simple argument you can make to them. I like to go to facts. Sherrod Brown voted to remove Donald Trump from office twice. So think about it. If he gets back into office, he's going to do that a third time. You're literally negating your vote for Donald Trump if you're also voting for Sherrod Brown, who for one thing or another, one foot fault or another, or even a made-up one at that, they're going to vote for some kind of impeachment and removal. You know that's coming. So why on earth would you vote for that? It doesn't make any sense. So you're just working our way down the ballot. You got Donald Trump, send him back along with JD. They're going to do it in Ohio, and I think they could win in a landslide nationally. I'm feeling good about this. And we're going to win in a landslide nationally. I mean, don't get complacent, but I think a landslide could actually unite the country. But then you move down, you want that majority in the Senate. It's just logical sense. If you're going to vote for Donald Trump, vote for Bernie Moreno, because otherwise you're voting for a guy who's literally voted to remove Donald Trump from office twice. And then Republicans all the way down the ballot, the state elections are equally important. But get down to the bottom, I want to say a word about this. Just by show of hands, who in this room is familiar with issue 1? A good number in this room. Thank you. That makes me feel good, okay? Here's what's at stake with issue 1. It might sound like a boring issue or whatever to a lot of people on the ballot. No. This is the Great Reset reaching Ohio in our own home turf in our backyard. Okay, what are they trying to do? Right now, the way our districts are set are by a group of basically statewide elected officials. A majority of statewide elected officials set our districts right now. You don't like them, you don't like the way they do it, or they don't do other things. Maybe they're Republicans, they do a bad job. The people of the state can vote them out of office. That's self-governance. That's a constitutional republic, backstopped by our democratic will at the ballot box. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how it works right now. They want to change that. To say that, no, we don't want we the people to be able to decide how our state is governed. No, we're going to create a class of unelected bureaucrats who cannot be removed by the voters. Even if they commit a felony, they can't be voted out by voters. They can only be voted out by their fellow Anthony Fauci-esque bureaucrats. So the question is, do you want Ohio run? My friend Jim Jordan, I saw his picture up there. He's captured it better than anybody else. Do you want 16 Anthony Faucis running the state of Ohio, or do you want it to actually belong to we the people? That's the choice we have. It gets worse than that. Not only can you not vote these unelected bureaucrats out, which is itself anti-American. You can't make this stuff up. If you dare to speak to one of those individuals about anything relating to redistricting, you're effectively committing a crime that they will report you to the government for having the gall to speak to them about it. That's a First Amendment violation. So here's the thing about issue 1. Even if it passes, it's going to get overturned by the Supreme Court. It's a First Amendment violation hiding in plain sight. Why do it the long way and waste all the money when we can just do it the right way at the ballot box this time around? That's why voting no on issue 1 is critical. It's a Democrat-led scheme to turn Ohio blue. It's an extra constitutional means outside the bounds of the Constitution. And I can't even make this stuff up. It sounds like you would have to imagine these possibilities. You couldn't even imagine it. That some Swiss billionaire is putting $5 million into Ohio. I mean, what the hell does he care about the way we're running our elections if this weren't part of a broader, really global scheme for which Ohio is just the beginning, the tip of the spear? And if they do it here, they're going to do it everywhere. And so, yes, we're going to win with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, but if everybody there also votes Bernie Moreno in and also votes no on issue 1, this is going to be one of the most successful elections of our lifetime right here in Ohio. And so that's what I want to say is Ohio is also on the ballot this time. Not just the future of the country, it's the future of this state as well. And I want to say a few words about this state, because the state is important to me. So my parents came here to Cincinnati, where I grew up. We've lived the American dream out of Ohio. That's where we were born and raised. And I'll tell you, it's interesting when you look at the journey of this state. It's a parable for the story of our country. So in 1949, it's not that long ago, really. Might even be some in this room who were around in 1949. I don't remember this. Ohio was really still all the way from the Industrial Revolution to even the late 40s, early 50s, was a shining light for the rest of the country. 5 of the 10 most prosperous cities in the United States of America, 5 of the top 10, think about that, were in Ohio. Toledo was the glass capital. Akron was the rubber capital of the West. Youngstown and Cleveland were the steel capital. Cincinnati was the consumer products capital. Dayton was actually the computing power capital for the entire Industrial Revolution. This is all the way even through the 40s, the 50s. You got guys like, I talked about that self-confidence earlier. Think about Neil Armstrong, John Glenn. They grew up in that era. To have the self-confidence as Americans and as Ohioans that they could go to space and that nothing was going to stop them along the way, in the tradition of the Wright brothers who set out to the skies from right here in Ohio. That was Ohio. We were a frontier state before there was even a frontier. I talked about Thomas Jefferson before. There was one state he admitted to the Union in his presidency in 1803, just one. It was actually Ohio. If he was here today, he's my favorite president, but if he was here today, you ask him what's the frontier state, he wouldn't tell you it's Florida or Texas, he would tell you it's Ohio. Signed the Lewis and Clark expeditions into motion. And I don't mean to be this say this as a Debbie Downer, but I'm a big believer in truth. Where are we today? Today, not one of the top 20 cities, most prosperous cities. 5 of the top 10 in 1949, 0 of the top 20 is in Ohio today. We're suffering from the fentanyl epidemic that's spreading like wildfire throughout the country, but through this state as well. You know, this young man will tell you, Gen Z, the TikTok generation will tell you, if you're to call something Ohio is actually the butt of a joke, which I think is too bad. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think that if you look at the beauty of this country is, Thomas Jefferson said this too, is James Madison as well, we're a laboratory for democracy, so people get to choose where they go. In 2023, the 2 states that people moved to with their own feet, packed their bags and went to were Florida and Texas. Hard red states. You know, we're number 38 on that list. We actually lost people mostly to Florida and Texas. But it doesn't have to stay that way. We have every advantage we've had since that moment in 1803 when we were admitted to the Union. The same access to the same waterways. A rich history that we deserve to be proud of. Great people, innovative people, people who have actually been the epicenter of the Industrial Revolution the first time around. It may not be the glass capital and the rubber capital again, but can still be the compute capital, a capital for the future of development of AI, or digital currency, or the future industries that are being born as we speak. I think that could happen right here in Ohio as well, but it does take a level of what we say in the country, being proud of who we are. I think we need that in this state too, to bring our own mojo back, to bring our own sense of swagger and pride back to a state that deserves it. People go to Florida and Texas because they're zero tax states. There's no reason that Ohio should not be a zero tax state. There's no reason why we can't slash and burn enough of the bureaucracy to actually make it so. It's actually achievable. Just cut the fat. What Elon Musk and, I'm going to play a role in this too, one way or another. Donald Trump's definitely going to do it. Slash and burn the federal bureaucracy. Don't forget we have a 4th branch of government right here at home in Ohio. Slash it, burn the ashes, and get to a zero tax state for the rest of the country. Lead the country in the way we run elections. We can do it right here in Ohio. Single day voting on election day as a state holiday with paper ballots and government issued ID. Lead the country in ending the scourge of illegal immigration. You know, there's a provision in the law that says 287G. It allows states to empower local law enforcement to say no to illegal immigrants and actually to get them out. I don't think we should be a state that uses government-funded welfare state money, Medicaid, welfare, etc., given to illegals who are in this country, or even given to any immigrant who's known to be on welfare and government assistance. Sorry, this could be a state where we set a model for the country to say, the welfare state, A, we've got to attack that in general, but B, we certainly don't want it for illegals or people who are migrating to this country, and use 287G to get illegals the heck out of the state of Ohio. This can be a leader in the nation for showing how it's done, for reviving self-confidence and pride in that next generation. Get the cell phones out of our schools. Get rid of the teachers' unions and replace it with merit-based pay for teachers to actually reward our kids in the next generation. Get rid of the DEI agenda all the way from K through 12 into the universities and replace it with civic education that teaches our kids about the history they deserve to be proud of. I think every 18-year-old who graduates from high school should be able to pass the same civics test that every legal immigrant has to pass in order to become a voting citizen of this country. That's not controversial. And I can tell by your suit that you're going to be able to do it. You know, I believe you will. And you know, that's that sense of self-confidence and pride that we ought to revive. Sign a basic bill into law. We couldn't do it this last time. Boys can't compete with girls in girls' sports. That you shouldn't be able to undergo genital mutilation or chemical castration until the age of consent at the age of 18. These are basic ways that a hard red state, and I am proud that we're a hard red state, ought to be able to lead the country to show what is possible in the state of Ohio and in the United States of America, to say that this is the best place to start a business. This is the best place to have a family. I've got 2 young sons I'm raising, so I'm selfish to want to create a country and a state where they can live that same American dream. And in the same way, we don't have to be this nation in decline. We don't have to be a state in decline either. I believe that our best days actually can still be ahead of us, that we don't have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. We can still be a nation on our way up, and I think it will take people like you, man, whose best days in life are still ahead, to see a country and a state whose best days are still ahead of itself. So we can all look our kids in the eye and mean it when we tell them, you get ahead in the United States of America, and yes, right here in Ohio too, with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what, you are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help over the next 18 days, that is what we will revive to save our great nation. Thank you all for coming out today, guys. God bless you and your families, and may God bless our United States of America. Do not stop fighting until we get this job done. We will save our country. It is worth saving, and save it we will. Thank you, guys. We love you. Good to be here, Delaware County. Bring it up here. Thank you. Thank you. We'll take a couple questions too. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Maha.
Yeah, right here, man. Roger.
So, I've
Thank
been
you.
a lifelong...
I would give you the microphone, but Roger doesn't need it. Hey, you take it. Yeah.
I've been a lifelong Democrat atheist until July 13th, the day that Donald Trump was shot, when I saw a miracle.
Thank you.
I was an atheist until I read your book, and you put God first.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
My entire social circle, my entire work circle is in the same fog that I was in. And I'm lonely, I'm lost, and I don't even know how to talk to the people I love the most. I know you've been around the country, you've spoken to people who've had that fog. How can I start that conversation so that I don't come off as, I can have that spine, I want to have that courage, but I'm afraid to put a Trump sign in my yard. I know, but I'm afraid of losing my, it's scary.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, Roger. Thank you for sharing that story. And I think that one of the things that I want to see us do better is to say that even if you voted for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or whatever, but you open your eyes and you care about this country and what's best for the future of our country, call yourself a Republican, call yourself a patriot, whatever you want. We have a place for you in this movement. And so I want to say thank you for keeping an open mind. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, I was at an event last weekend. We were in Florida I was with Ben Carson, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, myself. We're all speaking at the same event. Don Jr. was there. With the exception of Don Jr., all of us had in common that we'd run against Donald Trump for U.S. president, and yet we all support him right now. And I think that that's something that we got to embrace in an America First movement that's just bigger than even the historical Republican Party. We may not agree on you may not agree with Donald Trump or Republican elected officers on every last policy, but we agree on the basic rules of the road, right? That you get to speak your mind as long as I get to in return, that we the people create a government that's accountable to us rather than the other way around. And you're asking about how to speak to your fellow peers, your friends, your family members. So I'll share with you my experience in the presidential campaign here. There were moments, and you could argue maybe I did a little bit more of this than I needed to, or dunking on the left, right? I faced off with Don Lemon. It didn't go well. He ended up off air at the end of that because of some things he said that were pretty odious. But those weren't my favorite moments, actually. My favorite moments were when we would have, actually, say an event like this one. There'd be somebody, I don't think it's going to happen today, but there's somebody would storm in, it'd be a protester, thinking they disagreed with my position on my pro-life stance or my stance against the anti-fossil fuel agenda and against the climate change agenda. Those used to be the two most popular ones, sometimes on the LGBT issues. And my view is, the first time this happened, I was in a town called Ottumwa, Iowa, okay? And it was the first time I, in the moment, had to think about how we were going to handle this. So she was screaming. She was screaming at the top of her lungs. Initially, I thought she was a fan. It quickly became evident that she was dead set against my, in this case, pro-life view. And she was creating chaos. She got booed, and then the security started removing her, and she was at the back of the room. And I just felt that is this really the way we want to do this in America? It didn't feel right. I told the security, I said, bring her back. We're going to hear from her. And you get to state your opinion. We gave her the microphone. So you get to state your opinion as long as you're respectful for those who are here to be heard in return. Turns out that she actually was a woman who opted for life, not for abortion. She was a single mother. She was going through what sounded like a very difficult period in her life. She shared her story of how she's bringing her own daughter up in difficult circumstances, her courage to do it, and how she's proud of her daughter. And she was interrupted by the same audience that had booed her about 5 minutes before by applause. She broke down in tears, and I think there was a connection made between members of that community that otherwise wouldn't have happened if we didn't actually embrace and have open conversation. And so all I would say is in the same, we're not going to beat the left by imitating the modern left, okay? Sometimes we got to fight fire with fire, but sometimes we got to bring the water, which is actually far more effective in putting it out. And so my ask of you is to share your story, and the chances are that, especially in the rooms that you might be in, different from other people in this room, when you're the only person in that room who believes what you do, just say it. Say it with respect, and give the other person the courtesy, the same thing, to be heard in return. Half the battle is people just want to be heard. And you brought up the point of faith, which is important to me. So chapter 1 of the most recent book for a reason. You know, I think part of this is when there's a hole the size of God in your heart and God doesn't fill it, something else will instead. And Blaise Pascal, he was a scientist, he said that 400 years ago. I think the same is true in our country. When you stop pledging allegiance to the American flag, you start pledging allegiance to different flags instead. That's why you see more transgender flags in Washington, D.C. in the month of June than you do American flags. But we're not here to be angry about that. We got to actually say this is the true purpose, and that we share that in common even if we disagree on some of the details. You keep spreading that message, and you're going to be the kind of person that helps us win this November. I'm counting on you to do it. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Dan, we'll go to you next, and then we'll come to you.
Thank you for being here. My first question is, how do they get foreign money to come into our state legally? And the second thing is, all of the migrants or illegal immigrants that have been flown into our country and are given asylum, are they considered legal now, and how do we undo that?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dan. So I visited Springfield a few weeks ago. It's actually, to the point of Roger's question, I mean, everything's going on in Springfield. I put up a Twitter post. I said, we're going to Springfield. We didn't have a plan. We just said, I'm coming, okay? Turns out some guy said, okay, we have an event center, I'll open it up. I said, great, we do the event there. They could hold 250 people. Okay, then it turns out that they need 350 people in. They have an overflow room. 2,000 people RSVP'd, okay? Hundreds of them waited outside for hours. Goes to the point, people just want to be heard, actually. Right, a lot of our friends in Springfield, and I spent a lot of time in Springfield growing up, I still have relatives who live there, have been told to shut up, sit down, do as you're told. You're racist and xenophobic if you just express your own difficulty. And that's wrong. Now, on this question of asylum, the problem with this whole situation is you have people in that community who are struggling, and yet are there some legal immigrants who come to that community of Springfield as well, who actually are adding value to that community? Yes, but now we have policies that are so sloppy, we have stopped ourselves from even being able to tell the difference. So here's what we need to do, I think. You want to solve the immigration problem? Let's just get really serious. And you're going to get this with Donald Trump back in office. Complete the border wall, reinstate Remain in Mexico. Most people coming to this country across the border are not starting in Mexico, they're starting in other countries. Stop funding sanctuary cities. A lot of this is a money problem. If you're in the country illegally, return to the country of origin. And then to these questions about the asylum cases, I think we need one more rule. If you are going to be a customer of the welfare state, in any form, Medicaid, welfare, state-sponsored assistance, then the answer is no, you don't get to enter this country. We haven't taken that step yet. That's the way I look at it. So the three principles for immigration are this. And to Roger's question, here's how I talk to the left about it. Tell me if you find somebody who disagrees with this. I haven't found it yet. 1, no migration without consent. It's like your body. No migration without consent. Number 2, consent should only be granted to migrants who benefit America. If you're using the welfare state, you don't benefit America. And number 3 is those who enter without consent must be removed. I haven't found anybody who disagrees with that in principle. So if we agree on the principles, now we just got to man up and actually apply them. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate the question. We'll go here and then we'll come to you. Yeah, please.
So my name is Sue. I work with a large Cambodian and Laos community in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. and I know that Pennsylvania is the battleground
Yes.
for the election. So there's a large Cambodians and Laos who are undecided voters who can't seem to decide between Hillary and Donald Trump. One of the reasons is because they don't like Donald Trump.
Basically Hillary, yeah.
But then they said they want the first female president. What is your message to these undecided voters who are confused into who they should vote for?
Yeah.
Because that's important.
I love it was an accidental Freudian slip to say Hillary Clinton, but he meant Kamala Harris, but you know, potato, right? You know, she actually gets it. She actually gets it more deeply than anybody else, because like it almost doesn't matter who they put up. It's all just one machine, right? And so it doesn't really matter. So you know, my message is, who's going to make your life better? Okay, you're not. This is not The Bachelor or Bachelorette. Okay, this isn't about who you're going to marry. Okay, or who your kids are going to marry. This is about who's going to lead the country and keep your kids out of World War III. Actually, make prices go down and wages go up. This is about who's actually going to secure the border from illegal immigration. And my message to those Cambodians and Laotians, not just in Philadelphia but across the country, would be that it is worse for the legal immigrants when you have a scourge of 30 million illegals who are in this country at the same time. Who's going to secure the border, grow the economy, stay out of World War III, end rampant crime, and revive national pride in the country? It's not even close which one of those is clear. And now you don't have to speculate, because this is a historic election in one way.
I'm a 50-year-old woman, and I would like to know what someone like Bernie Moreno or myself can say to voters, single-issue women voters, who cannot get past abortion.
Yeah. So she's asking, she's a 50-year-old woman. What can we tell other female voters in a similar demographic who can't get past the issue on abortion? Here's the thing on abortion, is that we have to admit that we haven't done a great job of persuading the populace on this, or we wouldn't have lost on issue 1 here in hard red Ohio last time around. Donald Trump, I think, has taken a principled position on this, happens to be one that I share, which is that this is an issue for the states. It's not an issue for the federal government. And I said this in the Republican primary debates, and I got hit for it at the time. I'm actually strong. I'm about as strong pro-life as it gets, okay? But we overturned Roe versus Wade because this was not supposed to be a federal issue. It was supposed to be an issue for the states, so the same shoe can't fit the other foot. So what Donald Trump's saying is, you know what, this is an issue for the people. And I think Bernie's done an especially good job on this, to also say that we got to, I'm getting the sign, right? We'll end on this, but it's such an important question. It's such an important question for a lot of these voters, is that we're also the party that stands for actual economic mobility for those mothers, like that single mother who came in from Ottumwa, Iowa, that I talked about earlier. The reason she was so pissed off is that she doesn't have economic mobility anymore. She's raising a kid in a single-parent household where it's not particularly easy for her to find a path to get ahead for an American dream, or for her daughter that she believes has disappeared. So if we're going to be pro-life, and I think we ought to be, let's be pro-life womb to tomb, all the way, to also stand for life and the quality of life of every person and every woman and every child at every step along the way as well. And I think if we're earnest in demonstrating that, then I think we're going to bring a lot of those reluctant female voters back. Just to say half the battle is not that I disagree with you on the issue, but I disagree with you on the issue and you don't even seem to care. Versus, no, we actually care about women being able to bring up their kids in a world where it's a lot more difficult to do that than we make it to be. And I think we as Republicans ought to talk about that more effectively. I'll also give you one, to your friends, maybe a little bit of a question to ask them. It's based on a true case. Clarence Thomas actually spoke about this case in the Dobbs hearing. So there's a woman who's walking down the street, she's pregnant. She's assaulted. The unborn child died as a result of the assault. You find me one person in this country who says that that criminal should not be held liable for that death. It's possible for those women to opt for life over to opt for abortion. And I think, are we doing as good of a job as we could be? No, we're not. Are we done with this issue in Ohio? No, I don't think we're done yet either. But that was our warning call to say that we got to level up on our side to be able to build consensus, show that we actually care. And in the meantime, Donald Trump is committed that he's not going to sign a federal abortion ban because it's an issue that belongs to the states. So don't let them stop that from voting for Trump or for Moreno, because those are for federal office. That'd be my answer to you there. And I'll just say this in wrapping up, guys, is that, look, it's easy to be pessimistic
about the country. Okay, we have every reason to look at the last 4 years and worry, and I do worry, I mean this, when I say if we don't get it right in this election, if we don't get it right in the next 8 to 10 years, when my kids are in high school, I don't think we have a country left on the other side of it. That's the time window we're working within right now. But I'm asking you not to be so dour about it at the same time. We're within striking distance of turning the page on American history. We've been through this before. We went through a civil war. We were stronger on the other side of it. We lost our crisis of confidence. We had a crisis of confidence in this country through the Carter era in the 70s. We're in the middle of the Vietnam War. We had stagflation in this country that's even worse than we face right now, only to actually be led by Ronald Reagan through the 80s to a revival of a kind that was unimaginable not that much longer ago when Carter was in office. And so we've been through this before, and I'm asking each of you to keep your hopes alive. Don't be complacent. Be angry when you need to be. We'll be strong enough to fight the left, but we're also strong enough to protect our inner kindness, strong enough to protect who we are on the inside. And I still believe Ronald Reagan, if he were here today, he wouldn't tell you that it's morning in America now either, because it's not. But it can be morning in America again. I'm not going to tell young people in this audience that the American dream is alive and well right now, either at the level of the nation or right here in Ohio, because it's not. It is alive and hanging on for life support. But it can be alive and well again. And so I'm just asking every one of you to, at once, keep that burning frustration alive when you go vote in the next 18 days and win this election. But don't forget that part of you that remembers who we are as Americans. And for all our faults, this is still the last hope and the last best hope on God's green earth that we have for freedom and prosperity and liberty. That every one of you knows that you have your own unique God-given gift. It's not the same as the person sitting next to you. That's what true diversity is about. But this is the country that allows you to achieve the maximum of your God-given potential, whatever that is. And so for all of our faults, I tell it to the left, I'll tell it to our side too. I mean, I would rather live in a nation that has ideals and falls short of them than to live in a country that has no ideals at all. So are we perfect? No, we're not. We've never been and we never will be. But we're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union, the pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, and certainly not Kamala Harris or Sherrod Brown is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about, and that is what we will revive to save this great nation. All right? Thank you, guys. God bless you and your families and our great state of Ohio and our United States of America. Thank you, guys.